What an incredible panel that was. Fantastic. So we know that technology is changing our society and culture. We've explored that so many times through the last 2 days, but let's turn that around now and ask how our existing culture, what's good about our existing culture, how can that shape technology and create digital well-being? So to help me discuss this, I'd love you to help me welcome keynote speaker and author, CEO of the Digital Wellness Institute, Nina Hersher, MSW. Also, from a country that really defines how to do digital culture well, digital transformation advisor, e-Estonia, Carmen Raal. And finally, to make his dramatic entrance, co-founder, co-director, MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy, MIT Sloan School of Management, Dr. Andrew McAfee.
Edie, thank you very much, and thank you all for being with us. We're going to wrap up this fantastic event by talking about digital flourishing and digital well-being, which is an incredibly important conversation. So we're going to advance that conversation, but I want to start off by shifting it just a little bit, because I think too often the conversation about digital flourishing and digital well-being is a little bit too negative, and I want to shift it in the optimistic direction. Because like we'll talk about, there's a lot to be concerned about. We have reason to be concerned. We also have reason to celebrate. So I want to tell a couple stories about that. One thing that we hear a great deal about is the digital divide, and we hear about that for good reason. It is real. Income inequality, wealth inequality are increasing, and technology is part of that story. But there's another story going on. And early this century, a guy named Robert Jensen got the opportunity of a career. He's an economist, and he had the chance to watch what happens when very, very low-income fishermen in India got mobile phones for the very first time. And they go out to fish every morning, get lucky, hopefully. Then they have to figure out where to bring their catch back to shore to market. And before they had phones, they guessed. And once they had phones, they didn't have to guess anymore. They could call to shore and figure out where the right place was to take that particular catch. So Jensen had the chance to watch what happened to their economic lives before and after this change happened. And when you look at the evidence, it's unbelievable. Their life changed overnight. And the amazing thing is everybody was better off. Prices stabilized. The people trying to buy fish got a predictable price and their welfare, their lives improved. The fishermen got a higher price, a fair price, and their welfare improved. And it was like suddenly everybody read an Economics 101 textbook. But that's not what happened at all. They knew economics very, very well. They just couldn't communicate. They didn't have the ability to figure out where to go be economic actors in the market. Once they got that very simple capability, everything changed overnight. Another thing we hear a lot about is skills and how very powerful technologies, especially these days artificial intelligence, are going past what human beings can do and acquiring superhuman skills and the challenges associated with that. I want to be clear, that is true. That is happening in domain after domain. But there's another story here too. A lot of us probably know that just about 6 years ago, the world's best player of Go, the ancient Asian strategy game, was no longer a human being. It became a piece of technology. And you could think, okay, that's kind of the end of the line for Go. That's not the end of the line at all for human beings playing Go, because two fascinating things happened. The first one was that interest in Go increased dramatically during that tournament and after that tournament. Kids all over Asia started playing Go much more often than they ever had before. The game had a rebirth. That's great. Here's a story I just heard a couple days ago that I wasn't aware of. People got better at playing Go. Not just beginners, not just children. The very best Go players in the world learned from the technology that beat them, and the rate of improvement in human beings playing Go is faster than we have ever seen before in history. So this notion that we have to pick humans or skilled humans or powerful technology, this is not true. This is not the right way to think about it. The last story I want to tell is about using technology to connect or not to connect. And we're concerned about this for good reason. Technology can be very isolating, but it can have the opposite effect as well. The last story I want to tell is about two Irishmen named Jeff Mccann and Shane Mulcahy. They're both paramedics. And one morning a few years ago, they were taking a woman who was about to give birth to the hospital in Cork, Ireland. And they realized from listening to her that something was not going well. The problem was they couldn't communicate with her. And I can't tell you her name for medical privacy reasons, but she was Congolese. She didn't speak English very well at all, and there was some kind of problem. Jeff had the excellent idea to get out his mobile phone, fire up Google Translate, and have a conversation with this woman in distress in her native language, in Swahili, and she gave birth to a healthy baby that morning. So as we dive into our conversation about digital flourishing and digital well-being, I just want to encourage us to always keep in mind that this huge transition that we're living through has a lot of good news and a lot of optimism associated with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I want to start with that, recognizing that the power of technology for good is incredible. I also want to recognize that this is such a personal journey for all of us. And I want to ask Nina, first of all, tell me about your work and how you personally came to this.
So I did come to this through a very personal journey. I had a very hard time talking growing up. I would get very, very kind of blocked on certain words. And I've been in fluency counseling and coaching since I was about age 4. And one of the things that I did to kind of cope with that and adjust for that was I used eye contact to let people know that I was trying to communicate with them. And as I grew up, I was seeing that sometimes I would be trying to talk to someone, I would hit a block on a word, and they wouldn't even know because they were texting and they were on their phones. And so I became a bit fascinated and a bit also horrified by kind of these trends I was seeing, and that led me down all sorts of roads, individualing my education to look at and research how these shifting norms of connectivity are truly reconceptualizing how we connect and how we develop as human beings.
Interesting. And you've kept that work all the way through, even till today.
I have. Yes. So I went to college for counseling, and I created this kind of individualized research track. And then after I graduated, I noticed that there really wasn't programming out there. And so that's what I've made my life's work all about. And we formed a trade collective of other individuals and organizations doing this work, many of whom are here today, and a variety of other projects which we can talk about later. But it fills my heart with such joy to see people who are coming to this topic, and also to acknowledge that a lot of people do have an activating event that really brings them to this work, and it can be quite heavy. And so looking forward to talking more today about how we can bring positivity and playfulness into our innovative solutions to digital well-being.
Carmen, what about you? How did you come to this work, and how did you develop such a passion for it?
Yes, so it actually started when I lived away from Estonia. So that was my aha moment to see that actually it's not that easy to interact with your state everywhere. Actually, we were quite special, and I got a lot of questions about the digitalization in Estonia, and that's my first realization of how special actually we are in that aspect. Additionally, I had the privilege to work as a caseworker. So in that perspective, I really saw how our digital services gave us more time to focus on human-to-human interaction, which is actually the real help that people need. And especially during COVID times, when unemployment rate rose drastically, we had this time to focus on actual human beings. And lastly, I have my educational background in government and politics, and since digitalization is so pervasive in Estonia, it's something that has been part of our education already in university. So when I discovered this job application, I thought that, well, this is for me.
Andrew, what about you? How did you come to this work?
How many of us out here are parents? You know the period when you see your kid become fascinated with something and you know that's what that child is going to be? My mom brought home a box of computer punch cards one day in the late 1970s. I'm not going to ask how many of us remember computer punch cards, but she brought home a box of punch cards, and I said, Mom, what are those? And she said, well, they're for programming a computer. And I said, hold up, what's a computer? And she tried to explain it to me, and I kept cross-examining her, and I remember that day with crystal clarity, because that was the day that I knew what kind of nerd I was going to be growing up.
So tell me, Nina, as we think about culture change, you have a concept about digital flourishing, and I'd love you to explain more about what that is.
Certainly. So this idea of digital flourishing is kind of the proprietary approach of the institute that we launched. And simply put, I would say it refers to a mindful approach to technology usage, where we get to enjoy all of the beautiful things that it affords us, such as being here today, such as this kind of hybrid format, and also helps us to avoid some of the unintended consequences and harms, which can range from problems in ergonomics to fear of missing out to cyberbullying and so much more. And so we have this flourishing wheel to kind of consolidate a lot of what's being talked about here today, and the categories are something like environment, productivity, physical health, mental health, quantified self. There are a few others as well, but those are some that are resonating with the most people. And so the goal of this model is to get it out to the masses and to teach people that there is a way to have an empowerment-oriented relationship with technology, where we can take all of the research, take everything we learned here, and then move into action, both individually and kind of as a society, acknowledging that conversations are very important both culturally and within organizations, because they're very interdependent.
Nina, actually, let's ask the audience, how many people here have been to Estonia? Anyone been to Estonia? Okay, you guys, I've never been to Estonia, and I am dying to go because I know how integral digital is to the country. But for those of us who haven't been there, who don't know, tell us about the fact, how are 99% of services online? And give us an example of what that looks like.
So first of all, if you decide to come to Estonia, I will be at the airport welcoming you. But let me ask you, do you enjoy filing your taxes or doing taxes?
I do not.
So it's something that frightens you, right? Well, in Estonia, we actually look forward to doing our taxes because we can do it with less than 3 minutes. And that's it. We don't have to do anything else. Another example is that our digital signature that has been embraced both by public and private sector saves us approximately 5 days per year. So that means that you have more time to focus on whatever actually matters to you. So whether that be your education, family, or career. So that's what we are all about, making sure that people have the time to enjoy what actually matters to them.
Carmen, how many times a day do you use that card that you showed us backstage?
Okay, so for context, I showed them my ID card, which also holds a chip. And with that, I get 2 PIN codes that allow me to identify myself online. And that means that I get to access all the digital services. Now I can identify myself with an app. So even when I log into my bank, I use it when I go to our state portal, that it acts as a one-stop shop. I can access to everything there. And even when I go to shopping malls, it is used as a loyalty card. So my wallet is not full of different loyalty cards.
Do you even have a wallet?
I actually oftentimes just carry my phone and my ID card, and that's enough. So, sorry, one more example is that if, let's say, a policeman stops us to check our driving licenses, we don't need to carry those licenses with us. We just hand them our ID card, and that's enough because we've managed to create this interoperability and safe electronic ID.
I mean, I want that, don't you?
Desperately. It literally sounds like science fiction.
Right? So, all right, before we come back to you, Andrew, Nina, tell us, what do you think, if we think about this great reset, what are the values and mechanisms of change that we can harness to do that?
I think a lot of it has been beautifully echoed here today, but I would distill it down to say that we're really looking at both the intentional use and development of technology, and we can't have one without the other. And when we were first starting in this work, we launched a trade collective, and that trade collective was kind of divided into the educators and the developers. And so it brings me a lot of joy that these conversations are being had together, that we're seeing accountability on both sides. And I think to that end, there are so many different points where people really want to engage and people really want to change their behavior. And so as you were just talking, something that came up for me was examples of that flourishing wheel. And so if we're looking at the domain of productivity and we're looking at, okay, when you're plugged in, are you being the most productive you can be? And when you take a break, is that break effectively recharging you? That's such a great example, because if we can teach people how to take back their time, we're also teaching them how to reclaim their peace of mind because they have more free time. And so when people talk about, hey, what is a break that really recharges me, right? I would encourage you all to think about if you had kind of an inner pilot light and you tried a few different activities, maybe from taking a walk in nature to scrolling online, which of those activities is lighting that light, is making it burn even brighter, and which activity is blowing it out, and maybe you don't feel rested after you take that break, and examining that balance, which is going to look a little bit different for every person based on your age, based on your industry, and based on what brings you joy.
Andrew, what would you add to that? What would be the values, mechanisms of change that are really important as we think about this great reset?
And Justin Trudeau had a really great way to say it at the World Economic Forum at Davos. I think the last time we had a physical Davos. He said, the pace of change has never been this fast, and it's never again going to be this slow. And I think that's just about right, because look at what happened over the course of this pandemic that we're hopefully getting past right now. When it first happened, we were all worried about massive unemployment that would never go away. We thought the jobs would never come back. Since then, we've had several waves of the pandemic. Now we're all concerned that there are not going to be enough people to fill the jobs around the world. And if anything, we're underprepared for the rate of change and for the amount of skill transformation that's going to go on. So if you're trying to run an organization and you're trying to stay on top of things, your job is going to do nothing but get more difficult and more challenging as we get into the future, which makes this issue of how do we deliver skills and how do we keep people productive, how do we keep them flourishing, that problem is not going to get easier. That problem is going to get more challenging.
Carmen, what would you add from an Estonian perspective?
Well, I agree, but I think that digitalization has really empowered my country. I mean, we came a long way, and we are not stopping. So next up will be live event-based services, proactive services, right? We are using AI to maintain our language, because we are a small country, and our tiny population, just 1.3 million people, so we have to take care of us. So yes, and to be honest, I think that all this starts from education. We really need to emphasize that.
Can I ask a question? I'm so
You're
fascinated
allowed.
by Estonia. I'm coming to visit. Is there any meaningful faction or constituency in Estonia that wants to go back to the good old days before digitalization?
Honestly, no. Maybe there are some, but oftentimes digital services can be so simple that you don't really or you're not aware that you're using digital services. So I will give you an example. We have e-prescription, meaning that if you need your prescription medicine, you can call your family doctor. The doctor will prescribe you the medicine. You don't get any papers. You don't have to physically see your doctor. You will just go to the pharmacy, hand them again your ID card that also acts as a physical identificator. And that's it. You got your prescription. And in the future, well, we have the information that people are in need of certain services. Well, right now the problem is that they still have to approach the state. So that's where the proactive services come in, meaning that if we know that somebody needs help, the state will approach the people. One example already works. So if a new baby is born, the doctor will register the birth of the baby, and the baby gets its electronic ID. And now we know that there's a new baby, and we know who are its parents. And well, then the parents will receive a message, congratulations on having a baby. Is this the bank account where you want to receive your child support? And you just confirm if it's the correct bank account, and that's it. Easy as that.
I mean, the great thing is that we can all apply to be e-citizens of Estonia, and I feel like I'm going to be putting in my application right after now. Now, so you guys are actually gurus of digital culture and how to do digital well-being well. So I want to ask you, when people come to you to find out your secrets. So first of all, Nina, they come to you to the Digital Wellness Institute because they want digital wellness. So what are those secrets that you're giving them? What are they looking for in particular?
I think we are primarily teaching people how to reclaim their peace of mind in an era of constant connectivity. And that's something that we all crave. I don't know if you all have been walking through that beautiful kind of exhibit that shows what it's like to wake up with all the notifications and what it's like to just sit in front of the lovely, calming fireplace. But I think that this is such a great example of what people are looking for. And so when they come to the Digital Wellness Institute, they're looking for I would say the terminology and the frameworks to give voice to what they've been experiencing. Even today, I've heard so many new terms, and so we're incorporating new teachers, we're incorporating new terms all the time. And at the Digital Wellness Institute, we created an accreditation program that is essentially a continuing education for people with rich experience and training all over the world who want to become certified digital wellness educators. And we've been able to offer them continuing education credits for nurses and for educators and psychologists and all of these people who are looking for the tools but maybe didn't have exactly the right words, exactly the right phrases. We also have, university partnerships, we have on-demand courses, we have programs for HR, we have keynotes, but it's all about people from all walks of life, from engineers to HR to entrepreneurs, who are simply looking to get ahead and make sure that they're equipped for this new age that we've grown into, especially during and coming out of COVID.
Andrew, people come to you to find out the secrets of Silicon Valley's success, and I know you're writing a book on this. So what is it? What is the secret?
I can't tell you yet. No, but Edie, like you say, I have this privilege with my career in a business school where I get to talk to people both in, this is not the right terminology, but the old economy and the new economy. And the most common question I get asked with management teams or leaders of old economy companies is exactly the question you asked. What's going on in Silicon Valley? What's the secret? And let me give you a set of things that the secret is not. The secret is not that they have more powerful AI than the rest of us do. That's not it. They don't understand winner-take-all dynamics better than the rest of us do. Look, I've written books about these things. I want that understanding to get out there. It's none of that technological magic. The secret is actually, I think, very simple to say, very hard to do, and very counterintuitive. And the secret to me, which the book is about, is they have figured out a better way to run a company. And let me give you a couple examples of that. My favorite question to ask anybody that works in a Silicon Valley tech company is something like, is it okay for you to disagree with your boss? And they look at me like I'm insane. And they say, that's my job. What else are they paying me for except to tell my boss that they're wrong sometimes when I think they're headed down the right path? Let me tell you, when I ask that question of people who work in the rest of the economy, I don't hear that answer nearly enough. And one of the things that Silicon Valley has figured out, not because they're smarter, but because those companies have all grown up in this relentlessly competitive, nasty environment. It's competitive out there in the product markets. It's also competitive out there in the talent markets. If you're trying to run a company in tech and you cannot attract and retain the absolute top talent, you're just not going to succeed. So one of the ways you attract and retain top talent is by listening to them and taking their opinions seriously and having a much more kind of open, egalitarian culture. I'll give you one other example. The Inspector General of NASA, who's this watchdog about NASA's finances, just testified before Congress a couple weeks ago. And NASA is very proud of their new big rocket to get stuff into space. It's called SLS. And the Inspector General said, look, as far as I can tell, it's going to cost NASA about $4 billion, that's with a B, dollars per launch for the SLS, and they can probably do about one a year. That's their capacity. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, who is the CEO of SpaceX, says that they have a comparable rocket called Starship, and he says, I'll be able to do a launch for about $5 million. Okay, now Elon's a little bit of an optimist about these kinds of things, so let's say it's 10 times that. That's 50 million versus 4 billion. It's not even close. And what SpaceX loves to do is blow up rockets. And what I mean by that is they run a test. They build something big, they do a test. Their job is to see if it fails or not. It very often fails. They don't risk human life, but they will blow up rockets, experiment, try something new. They figure out their way forward by experimenting and iterating and getting feedback. NASA, in general, finds its way forward by having an extraordinarily detailed plan that lasts for years, that they follow to the letter, and that gives them $4 billion per launch kinds of rockets. The secret is it's hard to do, it's not that hard to articulate. Move fast, be willing to fail, listen to your people, and be open to the fact that you might be wrong.
Fascinating. Carmen, one of the things I would like to come to Estonia to discover is about the education you do right from the start. I mean, maybe not right from the start, but you've at least got your digital identity card. But at school, the digital culture is pervasive from the first moment you attend, right?
Yes. So our secret is that we started so early on. In 2001, every school in Estonia had a computer class and internet connection. And already at that time, kids started learning how to use computers. And simultaneously, we did not leave out adults. It's important to educate them as well. So we had a program called Look at World, and it was for free for anyone to attend and learn how to use basic computer or how to use computers. And we started so early on. Nowadays, it has evolved into something so much more. So we are aware that there aren't that many women in tech. And with that also, you have to start early on. And we have created after-school club called Unicorn Squad that's exclusively for girls. And there they can learn everything about tech. And we've noticed that it is actually very popular, and it has run for years now. And yes, so retraining, whenever people are about to lose their job or are unemployed, we focus heavily on ICT skills, because the truth is that jobs not requiring any ICT skills are disappearing. And that's why we need to take care of everything. And coming back to education in school, now it has evolved into something so much more. So kids in primary school already are learning robotics and coding through playful means. So when they have to make their choice, what they're going to study, who they want to be, they know what this field of technology can entail and what opportunities they have and how fun it actually is.
What about the older folks? And I know now everybody's totally in this digital culture, but what about when it first started? And I think personally about my husband's great aunt who handed her machine back to the bank, but as a result, she has a really hard time banking because the bank has closed its actual branch. So when you started this project, how did you bring everyone along?
So it is meant for everyone who is interested. So of course there are vulnerable groups who get left out, and they are the elderly most of the time. And that's why we have to make sure that they actually can go and have access to those services physically as well in different offices. And it helps both people who are using online services and not using, because now they don't have to wait in huge lines because most people opt for digital solutions. And something we are also focusing on is keeping in mind who's the end user. So the services have to be so simple that my parents who are living in a small town and don't have easy access to public sector offices don't have to take an hour-long bus drive. They just can take their computer and log in, identify themselves online, and already access all the public sector services.
All right, we're nearing our end, but I do want to have you guys give us an idea of what an ideal future for digital well-being looks like. Nina, let's start with you.
Such a big question. I think that for me, an ideal future for digital well-being looks like us learning about all of this from the beginning, us integrating this more fully into different tiers of education for all different ages, so that this just becomes well-being, and it has to be digital well-being, which I know has been echoed throughout this incredible conference. And I think along with that, it's really understanding that we can be change agents toward this idea of digital flourishing. And we can use technology in a way that fuels versus fatigues us. We can bring intention to our attention and really focus on this idea of kind of conscious content consumption. And when we put ourselves in that seat, when we look at how it affects our own mental health, those around us, how we can focus on listening, as Simon was talking about earlier, all of these things become tied in together, and they result in more authentic connection, both with ourselves and with each other. And we created this holiday, and so this holiday that we created, goofy business creating a holiday, but we've been running it for 3 years now, and Digital Wellness Day this year will be on Friday, May 6th, and it's open to all of you in this room, and anyone and everyone that you know. Will have one free event per area of our flourishing wheel. And last year we had events in 26 countries and reached 7.6 million people. And so it's a call to join hands, it's a call to action, it is a way to amplify this existing global movement and have people hold activations in their communities, at their workplaces, and normalize the conversation about digital well-being, so we can not only feel more comfortable making changes personally, but with our families and in our workplaces.
Andrew, paint me a picture of a digital future which has well-being that also includes caring about the environment.
I'm going to pick up on Nina's excellent advice to take a break once in a while, because I like this thing way, way, way too much. But when I finally learned to put it down and go to the beach, my well-being improves dramatically. But what's interesting is that these days when I go to the beach, I usually go to kiteboard, because apparently I want to be dragged to death over the ocean by a kite at some point in my life. So I took up kiteboarding. But to know where the wind is and what direction it's coming from and how well it's blowing and where I should go, I need this to make sure I don't waste huge amounts of my time. And I get out there, get into the environment, enjoy being in nature. I put it down once I get out there, but this is an essential tool to help me do all of those things.
Finally, Carmen, give us your vision of a digital well-being future.
Maybe first of all, I think it's very essential that everyone has access to fast internet, because that's where all the opportunities are nowadays. And everyone has access to good IT education, and this has to be approached holistically, meaning that cybersecurity and cyber hygiene is also included. Also, I see digitalization as enabler of inclusion, cooperation, and creation of communities. And this actually already happens, but in the future, let's hope it happens even more.
And just to echo that, I think that there is beauty and there is a place for both imposed movements and built movements, as well as organic movements. And I was speaking with one of our teachers, Anna Lomanowska, who you heard from earlier, and I think that we really do have to have both to align again with that intentional use and development of technology. And so I love seeing your work, I love seeing all of these systems in place, and I think we have so much to aspire to.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd like you to help me give our panel a fantastic, huge round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.